us to provide the hope step.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tonko. You are a tremendous representative of New York State and America. Your passion for the Build It in America, Make It in America agenda is so very obvious. We thank you for that. I want to wrap this session up with going back to what we dealt with on the floor earlier today. Earlier today, we dealt with a continuing resolution that would go for 3 weeks, and it has a series of cuts in it. Some of those cuts are appropriate. Some of them are very, very detrimental. For example, about $120 million of reduction in the National Ocean and Atmospheric Budget. That's where we get information on tsunamis. That's where we get information on hurricanes. Why we would cut that out, I have no idea. It is going to be very, very detrimental to America. And on research, we've talked about that, not only in this bill, agricultural research, so that we can move forward once more with a new green revolution, so that there'll be food for the people of this world and for ourselves. That was cut out of this budget. And if you love to have germs and other problems with your food, well, you'll love what the Republicans did earlier this morning or this afternoon when they cut some $24 million out of the animal plant inspection services. Why we want to have contaminated food, I don't know, but apparently our Republican colleagues do know. So anyway, that's been done. But if you take the whole thing in context, I want to point out here that in December, with the continuing resolution in December, that was a Democratic-sponsored resolution to continue funding the government for about 3 months. We cut $41 billion out of the budget. $41 billion out of the budget. Now, when the Republicans came in, they decided to do a new resolution a couple of weeks ago, and that resolution would actually eliminate some 700,000 jobs in America. Is it going to lead to a solution of the deficit? Not really, because we're talking about the discretionary spending, which is a very, very small part of the American budget. As such, there's no way you can really solve the deficit problem in that way. Yes, we need to make reductions. That's why we did $41 billion back in December. But those were very targeted cuts that continue to allow America to invest in those things that create jobs. We're now into a new set of continuing resolutions, 2 weeks last week or 2 weeks ago, another 3 weeks this week. That's no way to run a government, but that's apparently what we have been reduced to. Now, I understand the argument that we didn't get an appropriation bill last fall. Why wasn't there an appropriation bill last fall? The reason is that it was blocked in the Senate by a handful of folks that threatened a filibuster. That's why we don't have a resolution. That's why we've been thrown into this continuing resolution problem. What we need to do is to take the long term. In President Obama's budget, the long-term deficit is dealt with over a period of 5 years, bringing down the deficit to a point where it is an acceptable part of the American economy. Allows the economy to grow with investments that are made now in infrastructure, education, investments made in research and development, so that we can grow the economy for tomorrow. That's a wise way to do it. But a feeding frenzy of cuts that actually would eliminate 700,000 jobs is not the way you grow the American economy. We have to be wise. We have to have the long term. And we have had the long term before. During the Clinton administration, we actually balanced the budget for the last 2.5 years of that administration, and we were able to create, had those policies gone forward during the Bush administration, had those policies been kept in place, we would have eliminated the American debt. Would have been gone. But those policies were radically changed by the George W. Bush administration. 2 tax cuts, not paid for, most of those benefits going to the high end of the economy, to the very, very wealthy, resulting in a significant increase in the deficit, and then an increase in the Medicare program for drug benefits, again, not paid for, increasing the deficit, and 2 wars, neither of which were paid for, the Afghanistan war and the Iraq war. Not paid for, but rather borrowed money from China and other places. The result of that, an enormous increase in the deficit, followed by the Great Recession, which was basically caused by greed, Wall Street greed, and the elimination of regulation. It was as though you had an NFL football game and you'd wiped out the sidelines. You took the referees off the field, send them back to the locker room. Okay, play ball, boys. You know what would happen. Chaos. And that's what we got in the financial sector when regulation was removed and we wound up with the Great Recession. We need to put in place sound regulation, good regulation, and we need to have the referees on the field. We also need to have a long-term vision on how to deal with the deficit. And you cannot do it by just, in a feeding frenzy, wiping out critical programs that create future economic growth. Unfortunately, that's what our Republican colleagues have suggested we do. We're not there yet. The H.R. 1, the resolution that would have lost 700,000 jobs, was stopped in the Senate. We're now into a process of short-term continuing resolutions to keep the government going. Be wise as you put forward those resolutions, I would ask my colleagues on the Republican side. It's a great challenge. It's a challenge that we must and we will meet. We need a balanced, long-term vision, bringing the economy along, allowing it to grow and to build in the future, whether that be the green tech economy of the future, the medical systems, the healthcare systems. We have great opportunity, but those opportunities will not be met if we're not wise and if we have the wrong kind of deficit reduction plans, which, again, we saw today on this floor not more than an hour ago. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time, and I thank my colleagues.